So if your bird is afraid of toys, this is the video for you. Now, what we're going to talk about is what to do when your bird is afraid of all kinds of new objects in their environment. And the reason why that is so important is because we can clear up a lot of problem behaviors like screaming, feather destructive behavior, even biting and attacking, just by getting your bird to investigate different things in their environment a lot more. So if you're coming to this video because of our free 5-day screaming challenge, then this is a great place to start, because a lot of our screaming parrot clients are dealing with these different behaviors because their birds never even really learned how to play and investigate novel items. Now, if you haven't checked out our 5-day screaming challenge, it is free, and it's just for the kinds of people that are dealing with problem screaming with their parrots. So it's a great resource for dealing with some specific scientific based methods for what we deal with. So we're going to go through this step by step. Now, this is part of a larger course that we have inside the Avian Behavior Lab, and you can also find this on demand as well as part of our Screaming Parrot package. So it's just a great way to get started. But let's look at what we're going to do when our parrot is too sensitive to its environment to even check out that first toy, and just kind of all the disinformation about why you haven't had success before. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how to get our bird to start feeling brave and coming to our first foraging items. Now, there's a lot of talk about this on the internet and just a lot of misinformation. So let's get to it. Now, first, we don't want to habituate our bird to the item. And what that means is that just kind of leaving it around in their space and letting them get used to it, or sticking it into their cage and just letting them get over it. This is incorrect pseudoscience. We don't leave a big toy item in their cage for them to get used to. We don't set it near their cage and let it get closer and closer necessarily. What we're going to do is we're going to start with the smallest possible expression of the item that the bird is afraid of and that we want them to get comfortable around for this foraging item. Now remember, we're going to be using seed ball clusters for the purposes of this course, and I want the bird to associate this item and these comfort-seeking behaviors with foraging. That's what's really important to me. So I'm going to keep it small. I'm going to keep the food value very high, and I'm going to keep it very obvious. So all of those things we discussed in the previous lessons. There are two ways to approach this based on your bird's comfort and familiarity, as well as just how comfortable they are moving about in their space. It also kind of depends on the setup of your home space, which includes the bird's direct home space, their caging, their aviary, and the play gems that you have with it. Now with seed ball clusters, I like to start with a really, really small piece of paper. And I tend to use newspaper, but you can use any paper that you think will work. What I do is I crumple it up, and then I let it unfold, and I place the food in the center of it. Now, if the bird will approach something like this, we can place it in the bird's food bowl. Now, if it's hesitant, we don't want to scare the bird away from the food or their water, so we place it in a treat cup so we aren't interrupting the motion towards the food or the water bowls. This is really important because, again, we're keeping that food really obvious in the paper. So what we want to do is make sure that we're putting it in a place that's easy to get to, really, really obvious, but we're not scaring the bird away from their normal flow of life. So the bird must be going to that small paper before we move it up a notch readily. So keeping that treat bowl is also something that the bird must be comfortable with. Now, let's go back to what kind of paper we're going to be using. Again, I like to use newspaper. It's readily available. You're kind of recycling and reusing it, but your parrot may not. I know several of my clients, they have parrots that really don't like to use paper. So we can use plain white paper, we can use butcher paper, and we can even use tissue paper from the dollar store. I don't like to use magazine type print, and that's because it's slick and it's hard to use, and some of the prints that are used on magazines might be harmful. Newsprint is soy-based here in the US, so it's designed not to be harmful to humans. It is important to pick the right type of paper. Again, we don't want to get this wrong because the whole point is that we want this bird to have those comfortable approach behaviors with a small piece. We will get to other materials like other types of foraging items in a later lesson, but we're not going to worry about that later, or we're not going to worry about that right now. So if the bird will not go near the new item at all, then we'll only place the item at its nearest distance that the bird is acting normally with it in the view. Okay, so this could be completely outside the home space. We could place it in a less charged area like its play space, and we'll place it where the bird is still acting comfortably and normally, and then when the bird is in a comfortable state, we'll remove it without them getting too worked up. Okay, so what this means is that we're avoid pushing the bird into an uncomfortable state when it sees this item in its normal view. And we're using, again, like a crumpled piece of paper. We won't necessarily use food at this point, and I'll get to that why. When the bird shows more comfort around that crumpled piece of paper, small piece of paper, you don't want to bring it closer, which is our instinct. You want to take it away and then restart again in just a little while, maybe like a couple minutes. This is similar to the Peter principle in management. So the Peter principle is that when an employee is doing well, we promote them and give them more responsibilities. And it states that the person who is competent at their job will earn a promotion to a position that requires different skills. If the promoted person lacks the skills required for the new role, they will be incompetent at that new level, and they will not be promoted again. If a person succeeds in their position, we give them more responsibility until they fail, and then we stop promoting them. The entire concept is so common in business management that they named an entire principle after it. Animal training, we see the same thing. We have success, we see calm behavior, so we keep pushing the animal until they show a fear response. So this is how negative reinforcement works. The bird is calm, so we bring this scary stimulus closer, which further evokes a fear response instead of pulling it back, which would then remain calm. So we're reinforcing that calm behavior by taking the thing away. Using these behavior science principles, we shape the beginning stages of foraging. So we start really small. We use calmness as a guidepost, and if your parrot is already feeling alarmed with that item there, you're making short training sessions out of it, okay? So that's the way that we're actually going to shape calm behavior. So you're not just like leaving it in the bird's environment and just like placing it there and waiting for it to get over it. I like a really flat surface, and so I might also place like favorite treats loosely scattered, not too many, because I want the bird to like walk up and eat. And then I'll place the crumple at a distance that the bird is comfortable with the treats in between the bird and the crumple. So when it approaches the treats, I might remove that crumple. So this is what I will do if the bird is like comfortable moving around the space and I want them to like notice that crumple, but it's like I have like the furniture that the bird can kind of notice these things. So keeping these repetitions, the removal is contingent upon the approach of the crumple. So the bird will get closer, and rather than show fear towards the object, we will eventually get curiosity and even motivation to eat the goodies. Only then do I start putting the goodies inside the crumple. I do not want them to dine and dash. I don't like that kind of behavior, because that's where I frequently get that avoidance behavior that I think we can we see when we get habituation or counter conditioning. There was this example with a Roomba, one of those motorized vacuum cleaners, you know. Several of my birds and my clients' birds go into flight or freeze mode around these auto vacuums. And simply putting food around it or having the bird eat while the Roomba is going, it just doesn't work, because when we have that really strong avoidance contingency, we're trying to get the bird to associate food with it, and that doesn't motivate the bird to show calm. We have to use removal of the scary object to reinforce that calm behavior in order to increase the calm and build confidence. So I just gave you two ideas of how to do that. One did involve food, but it primarily involved removing the crumple in order to do so. So only in doing that does confidence build, and the individual gets that the presence of the scary object is controlled by how calm the bird is. Those two scenarios can play out differently, and I think that they're really important because, again, it really depends on what your setup is, and I like to give people options so that they can kind of see how it works. But we're not just going to leave that thing laying around and wait for the bird to get over it. So actively shaping that calm behavior and showing them that calm means, oh, the thing goes away. Now you might be thinking, okay, so like, when do I start leaving it around? You start leaving it around when the birds start to show like a little bit more curiosity, like, hey, what's going on? Because its behavior is controlling whether or not the item stays there. So as long as it's calm, it's staying there. If the bird shows like a little bit of alarm, we can like keep it there, or we could like gently remove it, like, or we can gently give it space, but keep it there until the bird shows a little bit more calm. I have an entire course for all the avian behavior lab members called non-coercive negative reinforcement, and I highly recommend it in case you want to go over that a little bit more in detail. Chances are, if you have a bird that's afraid of bird toys, then you have a few other behavior challenges to work through. So check out my next video on the problem-solving paradigm for a scientific look at other behavior challenges.